This is the Sutton Finance and Warrant Advisory Committee. It is Monday, April 22nd, 6:30 p.m., and we'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so tonight we have we'll begin the public hearings on the budget and the warrant articles. We'll go through them. Tonight we'll hear from the town manager and town accountant. We'll go through the Council on Aging, Library, the Assessors Department, and Blackstone Valley Technical High School. Tomorrow evening, we'll go through the police, fire, highway, snow and ice, transfer station, and sewer department. And then on Wednesday, we'll deal with the school department and the planning articles. And at that point, we'll close the hearing and vote on what our recommendation should be. If there's anybody here that would like to address the committee on any of these issues, just let us know, and we're glad to have you. So we'll start the hearing tonight with Town Manager Jim Smith and Town Accountant Tim Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few items that we'd like to talk about before we go into if there's any specific questions on any of the line items that we can control. You know, obviously this is the town manager's budget, but obviously, you know, there's some items that we have direct control over versus department heads have input on as well. Let me refer to the little bit of a PowerPoint, the 3 or 4 slides that I have in this handout. I kind of walk you through this. This is a snapshot of a PowerPoint of the final budget presentation I did before the Board of Selectmen. And it kind of runs down some of the highlights of the updated budget. The school appropriation is still at $426,520. That's $400,000 from the town and $26,520 from the state through Chapter 70 monies. The state, or at least the House Ways and Means, increased their budget to $30 per student just recently. So I don't know that the House has scheduled a final vote on that. That's just one step. The next step is the Senate. The Senate usually votes the budget by end of May, and then it, you know, kind of goes through this process. Obviously, these time frames can easily be extended, and often we don't get a budget until after July 1, an official budget. So whatever comes in Chapter 70, in addition to the number we've budgeted, the net number will be budgeted to the school department at fall town meeting. So as long as everybody's aware of that, the net of charges and offsets will be allocated to the school department, Chapter 70 money. So we, no new students from Norfolk Aggie. Blackstone Vocational had 6 students. Our health care costs are at 6.9%. That number's the same that it was in the preliminary budget. We are planning on making some use of free cash to strengthen our reserves in other ways. We're planning on a compensated absences fund to fund that. That fund has actually been created a few years ago. Yep. We're planning on putting $200,000 in that account. That's for sick leave buyback.
Yep.
That's still on the books. You know, as of 2008, I got it out of all our contracts. So any new hires from police and fire since 2008 do not receive that benefit. But we do have some legacy costs, I guess, for employees that were here prior to that. You know, the lieutenant of the police department is looking to retire next year. His sick leave buyback is significant, as are a handful of other people. So this will help us deal with these costs.
Yep.
And $200,000 from free cash to The state general stabilization fund, that'll bring that account up to roughly $2.4 million, which is the Board of Selectmen's goal of 8% of operating revenues minus debt exclusion debt.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Sure.
Is that 8%, is that a standard that, or is that what this particular board is, or do you have limitations on how much we
No,
can
it's
fund it
really,
to begin with?
I wanted 10 and Tim wanted 5 or vice versa, so we settled on 8.
All right,
It's
okay.
generally
All right,
the
it's no
science
statutory
behind
kind
that.
of thing.
No,
All
it's-
right, okay.
No, but I think the general standard out there is like 6 to 8%.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, Millbury just talked about they want to create a 5% unreserved fund balance.
Yeah.
So, obviously at 8, we're healthier
Right.
and in a better position than many communities.
Yep,
But it was just an arbitrary number that we chose and the board endorsed.
okay.
And the reason we subtract the debt exclusion debt from the total budget is because that debt is already being raised by tax revenue separately, and that eventually goes away. So it's just really, it's the operating budget
The net budget.
excluding that.
Yep, okay.
And right now, we don't have.
And this
any-
gets us to 8%. It's not like we're getting there, this gets us right there.
It's pretty close to it.
Okay, all right.
The second slide is changes to the budget, since the preliminary budget was released. The budget gap was roughly $50,000. We cut police holiday pay, which I think I let the committee know back in February. That's $22,000. Veterans benefits, we're reducing that by $10,000, and the Veterans Director and Tim and Laura are all in agreement with that. It doesn't mean if we get an additional veteran in halfway through the year that we won't account for that.
Yep.
But right now, we believe we have a little extra money there. Fire overtime, his overtime is running above the norm. So rather than give him the request, which is close to 50-60% of an increase, we gave him a 20% increase in his overtime budget, just to kind of moderate that. Fire electric was over budget. Council on Aging heat and Council on Aging electric, that was reduced by $2,000 in each account.
Okay.
And that's, we've been working with the department heads on all these cuts, so
So they can live with this cut,
I believe so.
Council on Aging on heat and electricity?
Yes.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah,
shortly.
yeah.
We're just about
You
to
can-
put that on the
you-
brain,
you can-
okay.
You can talk to the
Yeah.
source in a minute.
Just make them wear a hat
yeah.
and gloves. They're fine.
Yeah. So, and the final page is the forecast, which I will put before all boards going forward, which is, it's an important planning document that Tim actually worked and created back when S&P came in to rate us on our bonds back last fall. And they look for a 5-year forecast, and he spent a lot of time building this, and we actually spend time every year revising it based upon the actuals that came in and how we're gonna adjust these numbers. So right now, it looks like we're good next year. Even in 2022, we look pretty good. It's really 2023 and 2024 that we could have a potential issue, but again, all this is based on assumptions. It's based on assumptions of $150,000 in new growth that we receive. If that number comes in higher than that, then that's a positive. It's also based upon an 8% in healthcare. If that comes in at 10%, then that's a negative. And the same with all the different accounts.
Right.
BVT, healthcare, all these different accounts. But, it's important to know that we monitor this on a regular basis and keep this as our guideline as we look forward to future budgets.
Right, I mean, it's a dynamic kind of a forecast because, just whatever's, whether that the TIF gets approved and all those other issues. I mean, it's kind of hard to keep up with that with the projections that we have. So it's a once-a-year kind of thing, or is it continue that year?
It's more than once a year.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I've already put in, I have in projections, 19 is based on budget.
Yep.
When 19 is over, 19 will become actual, and that will affect what I'm projecting for 20,
Yeah.
21, 22, 23. So it changes. But I updated the projections where I left off last time based on the 2020 budget. So
Okay.
19 is still a budget, 20 now is budgeted, and then I did 21, the next 5 years after that, based on building off of 20.
Based on this current budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this document that you have before you was actually revised since the last time we met, because we balanced the 2020 budget,
Yep.
which means we reduced $50,000 in cost. That also affected FY '21 and FY '22.
Right.
So FY '22, which was roughly $67,000 gap, is now down to 17.
Yep. Good.
So, again, it's a planning tool that we will use and continue to work with, and kind of keeps us, our goals in mind as we look long-term.
Right.
Yeah, and it'll be updated again at the end of October, once the tax rate is set, and we know what the actual new growth is. Then that changes the whole revenue picture,
Yep.
and then we'll see what the gap is. I won't be touching the expense side, I'll be touching the revenue side.
Yep. Got it.
So that's that. The budget itself, generally, we open it up to questions on, I used to list the accounts out, but I've since just said town administrator and town accountant. Our budgets, public buildings, town council, data processing, central purchasing, benefits, and debt. We've talked a little bit about benefits. The healthcare is going up 6.9%. A lot of it depends upon open enrollment, how many new people are added to the plan, how many new people, or how many people are subtracted from the plan, choosing to opt out, which means there's a significant savings when individuals opt out of our health insurance. So
Is that opt-out payment a one-time thing, or is that every year?
it's every year.
Okay.
So every year somebody does not take our health plan, they get a $3,000 benefit on a family plan.
Okay.
Of course, we save $10,000 on
Sure.
every family plan.
Right.
We talked about last year of eliminating that benefit. We didn't end up doing that.
Mhm.
We were in contract negotiations. We got a lot of pushback from the unions. And the bottom line is we're saving money by them choosing to not participate in our plan.
Right.
So,
And we monitor pretty closely. We only give it out in 2 increments, 6 months and then 12 months. So we make sure that no one's playing any games with us
Okay.
on the opt-out. And there's some special circumstances where someone may end up, because of something that's going on in their family, maybe something happens, and we will prorate it.
Yep. Okay.
But just to head off a potential question, I can see maybe someone's gonna ask it. Jim keeps talking about 6.9% increase. If you look at the budget, it's only going up 2.81.
Right.
And that's because with the opt-outs and the HSA and all the plan revisions, we actually, right now, have about a $200,000 savings in 19. So the 6.9% is built off of 19's budget minus 200,000, and then 8%, or 6.9%, it gets us only to a 2.81% increase.
Yep. I was gonna ask that question, but, and the other question was, we had like 15 or 16 HSA a year ago, people that opted for the HSA. Do you have any numbers on what?
no, open enrollment is scheduled for May 7th. I think the actual event takes place, and people will then choose their health plan. Now, we've done extensive education. I was talking to Dr. Fitzpatrick. He's done the same, just trying to educate the public about the benefits of the HSA, particularly here at the town, where we offer a 50% match on the deductible. So if your family plan of a $3,000 deductible, we give you $1,500 towards that. So you're still responsible for the $3,000, but even giving the employees, half of the deductible, we get a significant amount of savings
Sure.
in doing that. My hope is that number grows.
Yep.
I've been talking to a number of people about it and encouraging it, and my expectation is that number will go up.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had that same feeling, and I think all of you work in, well, all except for one, work in the private sector. As an accountant have my own practice, I went 3 years ago to having maybe one personal client with an HSA. I can easily say that this year, probably 90%.
Yep.
Everyone has them.
Yep.
That's just the way it is.
It's the future. I mean, it's the way healthcare is going.
Right. Okay.
Do you want to talk a little bit about debt?
Sure. So in this 2020 budget, the debt is going down about 240,000. 2019 was kind of an oddball year because we had the refunding. A lot of things went on. We had some bond premiums. We had a few things that had to be given back. There was a bunch of stuff that went on. So 2020 is a nice clean year. It's going down 240,000. It continues to go down every year because we have the natural roll-offs. We've always done, I missed it once on one of the middle school, high school borrowings. But generally, we always do level principal and plus interest. So that each year, the total debt service goes down because the interest is going down.
Yep.
So we expect it to go down. The thing that I really like to point out is 2019 is when we brought on the police station debt. And that being brought on with the refunding, so there was some debt that went down because of the refunding. We brought the police station on. We had some natural decreasing in debt. There was really a minor increase in the debt service for 19. In 2020, with it going down 240,000, there's really we only had one small impact, 2019 for the police station. After that, there is no net impact on anybody's tax bill, bringing on a $8.7 million police station. The tax rates continue
Yeah,
to
I mean,
decrease.
it's remarkable.
But that's the way we've always done our borrowings and our major
Yep.
capital expansions is the timing.
Yep.
When's the best time to bring it? When the debt's coming down, and so we have a debt coming up here, but we have that to go, and there's some place in the middle. It really smooths out that impact, and you really,
It's really no
Can't do it.
different than how we did the middle school, high school.
Right.
We waited until the elementary school could be paid off and then brought on, so our debt service would have gone from roughly 2.5 million down to 900,000, but bringing the middle school on at the same time, that kind of leveled out the tax rate to, the tax impact of the debt service
Yep.
at that point, so.
so I think it's been at least 2 years, Nick can correct me, maybe 3 years in a row where the tax rate has either been exactly the same or down a penny or two. We haven't had a
Yep.
tax rate increase in a couple of years.
Right.
Of course, your tax bill goes up because by law,
It
we
goes
get
up,
2.5% increase, there's market value fluctuations. Everybody's bill may go up, some may go down, but the actual rate has actually gone down. It went down, what, 2 cents for 19? Yeah.
Right.
And we brought on an $8.7 million police station.
Right. I mean, it's completely counterintuitive. So I mean, it's great. It's good work. It really is. So.
So we will
Okay.
have, on Wednesday night, we will have some discussions on the warrant. IBA will be here requesting a pilot agreement.
TIF agreement.
TIF agreement.
Yep.
We're working on a pilot.
Yep.
For a number of others, but the TIF agreement, which we've negotiated, and, hopefully IBA will locate right next to Prime Metals up at 85 Gilmore.
Yep.
Bringing roughly 50 jobs to the town. Excise tax of $50,000 a year, which is what they're paying Millbury right now, will come to Sutton in year one. So
Mhm.
it's really almost a no-brainer that to support that TIF
Yep.
agreement.
Okay. I guess we'll hold any kind of questions for that until Wednesday. Good. Perfect.
Any other questions, or?
I may have asked you this before when we went over this preliminary, but could you just tell me about the cable increase, the increase in the cable department? What are we?
Sure. I decided to look at the comparisons and gave the director, Pam Nichols, a bump in pay.
Yep.
Christine Hicks went from part-time to full-time, 35 hours a week, and that, her budget, obviously, the salary didn't go up that much, but the
The
number of
hours,
hours
yep.
increased significantly.
Okay.
an important point about, excuse me, the cable budget is, that's 100% paid for by cable access fees. So even though that budget goes up, then we budget more access fees in local receipts to offset it. So that budget is really a net zero.
Doesn't affect our tax rate.
We receive more cable access fees than we do, that we pay out in this budget, and it goes into their revolving account, and they use it for capital purchases and other things.
Good, okay, perfect. Okay, any questions for Jim or Tim?
No?
So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So under the same thing, there are reimbursements then, under the veterans, under benefits, 75% comes back. So why do we budget the full amount if 75% of the benefits are coming back?
But it comes back
In the
the next
following
year.
fiscal year.
But cable access comes back this year, that's why you can do it?
Yes.
We get quarterly payments on cable.
That answers my, thank you.
Great.
I just wanna say, like a net, what did you say, 2.1% increase in healthcare?
I think it was
281.
2.81.
Is
Yeah.
pretty remarkable from what I've seen, and, you know, you guys did a lot of work on that since I started on the board, and it's definitely, paid off.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you did it without increasing the employees'
Yeah,
contribution,
yeah,
which is really a great thing in today's world. You don't see that very often.
yeah.
Right.
You won't see it very often either from us.
I was just trying to set you up for next
Yeah,
time.
no, we appreciate that, but, you know, unfortunately, we're in a situation where
It worked out for us.
that's an option that we need to look at every year, and, you know, we decided to
Well,
give them a break.
Kudos for doing it.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, thank you. So next we'll hear from Michelle Edelstein on the Council on Aging, and she can explain the heat and electricity issues down there.
Hats and gloves.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for coming.
Oh, thanks.
And if, just give us, does anybody know?
Page 8 is some of it.
In 20.
And
Okay. So the things that I noticed in the budget was the heat and the electricity budget was, were being cut by 2,000 apiece.
Yes, we've been very fortunate with the solar panels helping us with our bills, keeping them low. But most importantly, with the heat, with the new heating system and just a great job of insulation, we've really saved quite a bit of money in heating. Along with the seniors are very diligent about anything, lights being turned off, any excess lighting doesn't need to be turned on. So wherever we can save, we're doing that. But really, the heating has been tremendous, and I can't thank John Kuchar enough for helping us out with that a little over a year ago. So
Good. And,
you did away with a van driver or a driver's?
no, we have a van driver. Under the driver, we have a driver line now. We have van service for Elder Bus, for seniors. It's called Elder Bus.
Okay.
And they do a fantastic job of taking handicapped folks who are wheelchair bound to doctor's appointments and anybody else to shopping appointments. They're very limited in their hours, and you have quite a few seniors in town that have limited family support and a lot of caregivers who can't get off early in the morning to take a senior to chemotherapy or dialysis. Those of you that have ever experienced a senior who has needed chemotherapy, it's easier for them to go early in the morning. That way, if they're sick in the afternoon, they have a better option to going to the doctor seeking help, rather than if they had it in the afternoon trying to find somebody to help them at night. So you have quite a few seniors that need to be to either chemotherapy or dialysis by about 7:30 in the morning. An Elder Bus only runs from 8 to 3, and their times to go into Worcester are very limited, so it's only a couple of times a week. And as many of you know, trying to get a doctor's appointment when you need it because of the transportation restrictions is absolutely deplorable. And I don't think it's fair to our seniors to say, you have to be at a doctor's appointment and your doctor can't accommodate it. So this is where our driver comes in, and I can't thank Jim enough for the opportunity of a vehicle to get these people to where they need to be, especially caregivers who are trying to take care of their family members, and they still have to work. So we certainly help to fill that void or that need.
Excellent.
And you've done away with custodial, right?
Yes, that provides a great, right now we have a custodian who works 4 hours a week. So it's a couple hours one day and a couple hours another day. And that's worked out okay. However, we have a wonderful tax work-off program in town where seniors can get, anyone over the age of 60 can get money off of their abatement, and by volunteering X amount of hours, I say volunteering, but getting paid minimum wage towards working at any department in town. This is going to provide some of my senior men who have been waiting for something like that to do, the opportunity to do that at a much greater savings than that. And I think it's important for the senior center to do that, to go that route.
So my question every year, because I think it's important for people who are watching here, how many people come through the senior center? But my other one is the food bank,
Yes.
and the number of families and what you're doing there. Okay.
I sincerely appreciate you always asking that. So technically, honestly, we'll see anywhere from 50 to maybe 150 seniors a day. There are some great programs that go on, whether it's exercise or meal or informationals, blood pressure clinics, those kind of things really draw the numbers in. But more so is the Meals on Wheels program, which is separate from the food pantry. Meals on Wheels, we serve about 134, give or take, meals, congregate meals, where a senior can come in and get a hot, healthy meal Monday through Friday for $3. It's a donation. We don't ask you for it. If you can, that's great. But that's 134 people that take advantage of that each month to come in and have a meal. But there are about 580, give or take, seniors who get Meals on Wheels. These are homebound individuals that are handicapped or for other reasons unable to get out of their house to get a meal. So we have some fantastic volunteer drivers.
How many did you say?
580.
Really?
Yep. So that's duplicated. So that's not just,
Yep.
it's throughout the month. And I can't tell you how many times, whether it's in the winter or in the summertime, one of our drivers finds a senior in need, heat exhaustion, maybe they've fallen, snowed in, can't get out, so that kind of stuff. So our meal program is a tremendous part of that creates such good numbers as well. As far as the food pantry, I always try to stress the fact that the food pantry is completely separate from the senior center. We share the same premises, but we're completely, totally different. Volunteers all run the food pantry. No money goes into that other than the generosity of people who donate to the food pantry. You'll see anywhere from, right now, it's been very good. The numbers have gone down a little bit. We'll get anywhere from 10, and I put it this way, 10 to 15 bellies a week. So we feed 10 or 15 tummies a week. And that works out to be however many families, because the family sizes vary. We do go through a lot of food because you can't give someone just one can of peas or 2 cans of peas. We try to stock them up so that they have enough to get them through to at least the next paycheck. The senior center, the food pantry, has about 198 families that use the food pantry. Not all the time. They come and go as bills come, as school's out, when school starts, that kind of stuff. When heating bills, when it's been an extremely cold spell, and they have the choice between oil and food, you'll see a lot of people coming in during that period of time. The senior center does a great job of taking care of seniors who need food. And that comes through the meal program primarily. Once in a blue moon do we have to go into the food pantry to maybe make them up a care package. And if we do, that's very rare that that happens. But, and that's what you see. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that.
Questions? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
Thanks so
clearing up
much.
the heating issues for us. Okay, next would be the library. We can, Betsy and Lisa. I got page 21 on that. That's right. Welcome.
Thank
So I'm looking at a fairly level budget across,
Yeah, it's pretty flat.
yeah,
Yep. A little bit for inflation, but,
yeah,
yeah.
same number of people.
Yep, yeah, I
Yep.
redistributed some of the technician hours because their schedules tend to shift over time. As somebody leaves, somebody else might pick up different hours. So I kind of readjusted them a little bit, but it's the same hours.
Right.
And it seems to me that the library was fairly active, I'm thinking a year ago, like over a lot of programs over the summer,
We do
summer and so forth.
Crazy in the summer, yeah.
Yeah, is that what,
Yeah, we'll almost, so on average, we do like about 5,000 items a month, but June, July, August, we're doing like 7,500, 8,000 items a month over the desk. It's just huge, picks up over the summer.
really?
And we'll probably double to triple our programs for those 3 months. So I've given you, we do these quarterly, so this is the spring one. And the summer one's twice the size. The summer one will be 8 pages. So,
Great, okay.
yeah, we've been fortunate, this is our 4th year, we've gotten a generous grant from the Osterman Family Foundation for $10,000 each year for programming. The first 3 years we did, STEAM programming for kids was the focus of that, so science, technology, engineering, arts, math. And then this year we switched the focus to adulting, which is doing like cooking, sewing, banking, things from anywhere from actually tweens up to about 30-year-olds. Trying to show people that kind of stuff.
Some of us don't know all of that even when they get past 30.
You're
you know?
welcome to come on down.
Yep.
Laundry.
She said adult.
Oh, yeah, laundry.
Laundry.
Yeah.
We had a realtor come in to
Yeah,
talk
talk
about buying your first home.
And how well are those attended?
Good, good.
Are they?
Yeah, the adults are really loving them. I mean, the tweens are loving the cooking, honestly.
And did you get a grant for
Yes.
that, right?
Yeah, it was the
Yeah.
Osterman Family
The Osterman,
Foundation,
yeah,
so
okay.
Osterman Gas, yep.
Mhm.
Good.
So hugely, because we don't have a lot of money in our budget for programming.
Right.
So that kind of stuff helps us enormously.
I don't have a lot of questions about the expenses, because I think they're kind of
No, they're
flat, which
pretty
is
level
great, and I
funded.
think you guys do a great job
They
with
do a
what
great
you
job
have.
with what they have.
Really,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
we have a lot of fun things planned for the summer. We'll do several events on the Common again on Saturday nights.
Actually, we've got, is it 6 weeks in a row, Saturday nights concerts on the Common, so.
Do you work with the cultural?
Yep, we've got one of
Michelle?
theirs,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
gonna be one of ours, yep.
Great. Excellent. Is there a schedule out?
Not yet, it's
Okay.
in my calendar, but
All right,
it's all booked.
nice.
They
Okay.
start booking the summer reading January.
January.
They start planning all the summer reading programming. So
Excellent.
it takes a while to plan it all.
Okay. I don't have any
No?
questions. Jeff? Sue? No?
No, I think just comment. I think, it's great with this program. I think it's fantastic. Concerts in the Common are fantastic, so I think great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
Great,
That was
thanks.
easy.
Okay, we have the assessors department, and, I'm sorry?
Page 4.
Page 4. Yeah, page 4. And we have Robert Nunemarker and R.J. Nichols, page 4, to help us with that. Page 4 Okay. So I think one of the things that you know, I know what I'm dealing with, because I got the letter in the mail the other day about scheduling my appointment, and how that kind of impacts the budget, because I didn't see where that is, the expense for all that goes.
Okay, I'm Robert Nurmacher, R.J. Nichols. We're both part-time assessors. Both been on the board for a number of years. The revaluation is this particular one is a 10-year revaluation where they go around and remeasure properties, look at our property, take our property record cards and review the information for all the properties in town, making sure that it's accurate. And that's really the whole purpose and the whole aim of our thing. It's very nice that, I think it's very good for the town in that you have just a few people in their minds look at everybody and they treat everybody in that one mindset. Where otherwise there can be several different minds, my mind, Ray's mind, Joyce's, we all do things a little bit different, so there's more consistency in doing this. This particular revaluation, I think we appropriated about $180,000 several years ago for that, but then the state changed the time periods to increase it from 5 to 10 years. And a fiscal 2020 revaluation is what we're working on now. The revaluation is going well at this point. They've got through, I think, map number 22 out of 55. And there are 3 people, 2 women and a man that are doing the measuring and listing. And they go to each property, they knock on the door, ask if they can come in and look at that. As you know, a lot of people, the husband and the wife are working, so it is difficult to get inside. And the Department of Revenue really wants us to get inside every property. That's just about impossible. So they leave callback cards, which is perhaps what you got, Jeff.
I think I got something stuck in the door, a piece of paper, with no real way to kind of, it was more, we were here, and this is what we were doing. But then I got a letter the end of last week saying we want to schedule a time to come in.
And Joyce
Okay.
sent those out last week.
Okay, so we're working to do those types of things.
How
And
long?
again, the idea is to try to get in, and by law, we have no right to go into anybody's house. It is, in my experience, very, very unusual that somebody refuses to do that. Most people are arrested, they just want to be treated fairly. It only takes 10 to 15 minutes
That's
to
what I was
go
gonna
through
ask.
the
It's
property.
it's a 10 to 15 minute deal.
Yeah, at the most, and it's, we're looking at the card, there are several things on our property record card that deal with interior things such as the floors, whether you got fireplaces, how many bathrooms you got, how many bedrooms you have, whether your basement is finished, and it's usually a very quick look at those particular types of things.
Okay, and there's no points off for beds not beds not being made and those kind of things, and
Well, I
As
would
people go
fail
through?
at that, so we don't, no, it's,
Not this year.
but that's not what they're looking for.
no.
Right.
You don't have time to even think about that. They're supposed to do 15 properties a day, and that is very difficult to do if the people are at home. So they have a very difficult time doing some of those things. A day like this, they're downstairs in our office doing other paperwork and stuff like that. Just out of interest,
Nick, on that same subject, is there a schedule for, you said there were 55 areas, you've broken it up into sections, do we know the schedule?
our assessors map has 55 maps to it.
Okay, so,
Number 1 starts up at the most northerly portion of town, up on Chase Road in Wilkinsonville, and they just work their way through that particular thing. They generally go down one street and just do those types of things and go by map and map and map. They're taking new pictures for everything, and I've put in probably 1,200 new pictures into the system.
So they hope to have this completed by,
It has to be completed by, we have to come up with a tax rate in time for the end of the year, hopefully. What we're hoping for is by late September, the total revaluation, they're measuring and listing, and then all the analysis that goes into this, and the numerous forms that we have to submit to the Department of Revenue for approval,
so the
which
one,
is all done by Vision. We
Sure.
don't do that.
so the 180 that was budgeted and approved a number of years ago is, I guess I'm looking back at Jim here, has been sitting waiting for this. And since we've waited a few years, does that 180 still cover the cost, or has the cost gone up?
The cost at this particular time is $160,000, and then that can go up a bit depending upon how many new parcels and things that they find.
But
We
we
also
appropriated
have
180, so we're covered.
Right,
Okay.
and then we also have about $10,000 for personal property review. That is personal property generally in businesses, so they update that. It's done by a separate company. Vision Appraisal used to hire RRC to do their personal property. This year, we opted to totally separate them, so we have a separate deal with them to do those particular things.
Thank you.
So you said that they've done 22 out of the 55 maps for Sutton, and the goal is to complete by late September. When did they begin the process?
I think they believe that we have a lot of snow pictures, so they started back in January doing that. There was one person that started, and then they've increased it up to 3 at this particular point.
Okay.
We have about 4,800 parcels in town altogether. That includes the vacant land. We have 3,500 improved parcels, that's with a building on it. That's what we consider approved. We also have about 190 personal property accounts presently in town. And just out of interest, I looked at how many changes that we make. So, I don't know if I hope all of you people have seen our property record card. Each one of the little boxes in there is a field. There's additional fields that are in our actual system that we have to enter the information. So I just, sort of a little guess, how many changes do you think that we made? How many fields did we change last year? Just think in your mind what it is. I won't ask you because I've asked a couple people and they weren't even close. It was 17,800 changes made last year. At this particular time tonight, there are already 9,500 changes, and there's probably be 3 to 4 times that when these cards come back in and the Vision has to update our system. So there's an awful lot of changes that are made every year to our system to keep up with things.
So there's a capital item request for 38,000, I think, for Vision 8 upgrade.
Yes, they're discontinuing the present system, which we've had for, God, I would say 10 or 15 years. It's called Vision 6. And they're going to an updated one. We had the choice of doing it during the revaluation, going from one system to another system. As you may know, if you use computers, there's kind of like a shock in doing that. And we have opted to do that the following year.
And do you expect to get another 10 years out of this version, or?
I have absolutely no idea.
Do they have a subscription-based kind of a?
No, it's
thing?
not a SaaS offering, it's an on-prem offering, so.
Okay. Interesting.
Part of the reason that they change is our beloved Department of Revenue, DOR, with a change of personnel, you have a change of attitude, you change your forms, change your requirements that the town
So
has to come
every
up with.
town is using this the same software?
No,
Okay,
no,
There's
that-
only like 2 or 3 in this space, so.
okay. That's a good
presently,
contract to have.
presently Millbury, Northbridge, I think Grafton has it, I believe Oxford just has it, has Vision, which is good, that you can compare those particular types of things. There are other systems around. Vision is perhaps one of the bigger ones around, and they're not limited to Massachusetts. They do an awful lot of towns.
Good, okay. Anything else?
I'm all set.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And next, which would be the last for the evening, is Blackstone Valley Technical High School and Dr. Fitzpatrick. Welcome.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming back.
That's okay. As you know, it's interesting, the assessors have made 9,000 changes and they haven't even been to your house yet, Jeff.
I know. I'm hoping they get tired.
As the committee knows, I've made 2 formal presentations as part of the next budget cycle. And as mentioned during those gatherings and subsequent, there's been regular communications with the town manager. Town manager assured me that the budget requested that's been reviewed, discussed, presented, is within his balanced budget. It's obviously good news. And tomorrow night, I'll conclude my round robin presentations and finance committees in the town of Uxbridge. So that will finish.
Usually we're much earlier than this. So, much earlier in the process.
Yeah, the committee asked Valley Tech to focus on some priorities in the design of the FY20 budget. And as mentioned and hopefully confirmed, we took that very seriously and addressed those priorities. Included within those was health benefits was targeted. We did basically a full court press, if you will, relative to health benefits. Kibitzed with your town manager and a number of others. And made 6 formal presentations to our staff, had 3 different impact bargaining deliberations between the Teachers Collective Bargaining Association and their representation and the school committee's bargaining team, and met with insurance people and others. The end result was a tripling of our HSA coverages and a 0 increase in health benefits.
That's awesome.
Which is going to be hard to match next year. So, but
That's,
so-
but it's awesome, because it was a big number last year. I
It was
remember,
9%.
Yeah.
It was a spike last year. You brought that to our attention, and we took the hit about associated with it. Therefore, we targeted it, and therefore, we're pleased to offer the situation which brought a 0 increase for the next cycle. You also asked us to consider making additional contributions to the OPEB, and we freed up through a negotiation with the state, $183,000 of money that they no longer claimed, and we're able to commit that as a lump sum payment. In addition, we built in modest contributions from the operational budget and our own staff. In a previous collective bargaining negotiation, all professional staff make a contribution from their paycheck for OPEB. And we'll continue to do that and look at ways.
You know, it was interesting. We had an OPEB meeting here that I attended with our OPEB Trust Committee, and we have a policy here. We designate so much per year plus a certain percentage of free cash at the end of the year. And I was kind of surprised and we had the actuary here, that they didn't really give us a lot of credit for the free cash. But it was more the credit in terms of the calculation and reducing the liability. The contribution itself reduces the liability, but they look at that as kind of like a one-time contribution. So that was kind of interesting to me, that it reduces the net liability, I guess, by whatever we contribute, but it didn't really impact the actuarial calculation of the overall OPEB liability, which was kind of a surprise to me that they didn't do that. But I don't know how. I don't think you haven't had your valuation yet, have you?
Yes, yes.
Oh, you have had it.
Yes. My observation, the OPEB, the phasing of it began, first of all, they were asking municipalities and school systems to recognize it existed and that
Yeah.
it should no longer be ignored or not included within a budgetary planning. And then they ramped up next and say, no, we want to have a line item in your budget that recognizes that you know that it exists,
Mhm.
even if you put $1 in the line
Right.
item. And then we expect you, advancing the evolution here, was then to make good faith contributions. And few towns across the 351 in Massachusetts were able to actually make huge, you know, contributions to the OPEB because of the demands and limitations of state funding. And so, you know, we have been asked by finance committees across, we have 126 finance committee members across the 13-member towns, and asked, you know, are we recognizing it? Yes. Are we making contributions? Yes. And of course, we want to make assessment requests that are moderate, if you will, because the burden of that is subject primarily to the fundraising that we generate through the towns. So we have satisfied our auditors. They've offered complimentary remarks relative to the process we've used, but mostly heeding their advice that we recognize it and are starting to erode the remaining balance.
Mhm.
And obviously, some of our towns have, you know, they're more than double or triple our liability relative to OPEB.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough problem.
it is a challenge.
It is, so. So I didn't mean to interrupt where you
No,
were
not
going
at
with
all. A
this.
couple of the things, we built the budget that was presented to you on an estimate that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts would generate $30 per student, and now, as your town manager mentioned, the House of Representatives has in fact supported that $30 forecast. So we're on target for that. Also, our projections for regional transportation seem to be on target as well, based on the deliberations that are underway at the legislature at this time. I do have an update of our grant list. When I presented earlier, we were roughly 1.9 million. Now we're over $2 million in grants. So I have a complete list. Not all of them have been awarded. There are still some that are under pending or under consideration. May I? Thank you. Did receive some positive feedback. We have a fairly substantial grant for capital equipment because through the governor's economic bond, roughly $500,000. And the feedback was that the proposal was viewed to be well-written and presenting a compelling argument. That was not an award letter. We still await an award letter, but at least it's good feedback to show that it's under strong consideration.
Mhm. So it was 1.9 when you came in?
It was.
Yep.
But that's in the budget books,
Yep.
booklets that were printed by the students.
Yep.
But we didn't use too many trees, Pat. We actually plant trees too.
Today's Arbor Day, what's it
I'm
yesterday?
shocked.
Earth Day.
Earth Day today.
I like
Earth
your,
Day.
I like your sign out front there, you know, that says the name of the school and flashes and does all the advertising, so
The
I'm
digital.
really shocked that you bring any paper at all and that you don't electronically send it to us.
I wouldn't be surprised, as your accountant said, that with all these changes, that the future superintendent will probably just bring, you know, a disc for you.
Disc?
Or, you know.
Disc?
Well, first, we just got
Well,
new
I'm
chairs.
using
I
that's
don't-
my
Like the
term.
floppy ones?
We just got new chairs. I don't think they're giving us computers.
Yeah, okay.
So,
iPads are next.
Yeah.
an iPad.
By the presentations across the 13 towns have been, you know, as here, professional, amicable. There doesn't seem to be any major resistance relative to the support of our budget for FY20. And the school continues to rack up all kinds of awards. There's a whole collection of new awards and recognitions that the students have earned, from auto tech to engineering to many others, that we just hope the towns share in the accomplishments of the school and the students that attend.
Well, I can speak for myself, and probably for everyone here, that, you know, we recognize what we have, you know, at PVT in terms of the quality of the education. And I think I mentioned before that what I was most impressed with when I went through the school was just the level of expectations that you set for the kids, and they meet it. And I thought about that more and it's really just comes down to, having faith in the kids themselves. You have confidence in the kids, and it shows that they can, and they meet that, the expectations that you set. So, you guys deserve all the credit, for doing that and setting that tone at the school. So,
It's an honor to work with the staff that I work. The students grow with us, clearly, and thanks for noticing.
do you have any, or do you keep track of how students progress by town and the level of success that they have by town? In other words, if the kids that we're sending there, do we have any results for?
Normally, we would not do that. We do, in fact, respond to any research question we've asked, and recently did that as far as, usually it's enrollment projections, things of that nature. In that, we're trying not to divide the 13 towns once students arrive on our campus. And I don't mean, that's not a sarcastic way to respond. I'm saying that we want them to come together as a family. The teaming, the level of camaraderie, you have to move beyond the barriers of any community. So the 1,252 students all have to work together. So we try to have students continue to maintain friendships in their home community, but create new friendships in any one of the 13 towns when they come to us. So they kind of lose that identity, if you will, and they become a Valley Tech.
Well, I guess I'm more
But-
thinking that in terms of the preparation that they've had through grade 8, do kids from X town have more success because they're better prepared, or, maybe this town, they're better or worse prepared?
We have no exam for entrance into the school, but once a student is admitted, then we do a battery of tests relative to computation, writing skills. So we can gear up the academic levels in which they would proceed from the 9th grade. So we address that, but we're addressing that with 315 candidates, not necessarily town by town.
Mhm.
Now, can you disaggregate, by community? Yes, you could do that. And in one case, there was, I could say, there was some concerns raised, actually allegations raised, that we were only taking, the very best students from that particular community. It was not this community. And so we said, well, let's look at that. And as it turned out, that of the students that came in that scored advanced and proficient from that community, 41% of those students were needs improvement when they took the 8th grade MCAS test. So in a state-administered independent evaluation of the skill sets of the students, all right, there was no question, we weren't creaming, we weren't taking the best because there was diversification, but the growth, I credit the staff, the teachers, and the parents and the kids. People respond to the manner in which we teach. Our academic work is connected to, integration approaches, simulation exercises, role-playing, teaming, just so many diversification. I've talked about reenactments, Civil War, the next one we're planning is American Revolution. We have Skills USA competitions. Just the diversity, if you will, of the learning. One group just came back from a NASA trip in Florida, 28 students in the aviation program. It's just, we have a very sophisticated, very high expectation of the academic rigor that's blended with the vocational technical curriculum. And the students respond to it because it's so applied, so motivational, and it's a different way to learn. And that's what you saw when you toured, that's what Pat saw when he toured, and that's this, what they call it, secret sauce. That is the technique and the approach that brings great results. And it's not something, even the equipment investment, millions of dollars of equipment is there, but it's not in all schools. And new equipment will arise, especially if we're successful in even more of these grants. So we have a big advantage as far as what we can teach and how we can teach it. And not everybody has that. But the students, they grow in leaps and bounds.
Well, and that's, I think it gets back to, what I think is what it boils down to, just having confidence in the kids that they can do it and they respond. And I think you ask them to, and they do. But I'm just thinking in terms of, for each town, that, you've got this homogeneous success level for the entire school. How do we know that that the Sutton kids are doing better there?
Mhm.
As opposed, maybe everyone else is, maybe Northridge, Millbury, Blackstone, Millbury, they're all doing better, and they're kind of kind of bringing the averages up. So you don't, I guess that's what I'm wondering, is how do the Sutton kids do?
Well, we
With-
can look at that, but
Yeah.
if you've looked at the data reports, which are independently determined, to have the highest advanced and proficient scores in the district, that's not just a small pocket of kids. That's 315 kids who were tested.
Yeah.
We have the largest group of students participating in the test, and we have the greatest results. But it's,
But you don't track it by town?
no, and I said that initially.
Yeah.
No, we don't do that.
Okay.
But it's not a case where 50 students did well, and they brought up the score for 150 others. 300 students did well.
Yeah.
That's what the data tells us, the state census.
Mhm.
So all of the kids are growing with us.
Yeah.
It's not a case where you can carry me through. The data would say something different.
Yeah, good, okay.
No,
Go ahead, Pat.
Finish, I'll.
No, no. No, I just didn't know if you were gonna, usually you kind of go through it with us, at least the green page.
Oh, I'll
Um,
do it. I was just trying to pick up from where we,
Okay, yeah, and, because, I know we have a couple of questions, I have some questions on that, and I'm sure that others might.
okay.
Want to just go to the questions and?
Sure.
Go right ahead.
So, I guess the one, and Pat, jump in right after this one, but, the kind of, the number that stands out to me is the minimum contribution going up 4.82, and I know that's state-driven, I guess, from what I understand.
That's correct.
How, could you just kind of explain that somewhat?
Yeah, since 1993, when the state had the court situation talking about the different ability of communities to pay, the Department of Revenue has reviewed the schedules, often not known as Schedule 19, submitted by the 351 cities and towns. Then the Department of Revenue makes a determination based on property values and wages of the citizens of that community. And it arrives at a absolute minimum obligation, and it creates that level. Now, to our disappointment, that when we talked about providing and generating more money for education, my personal preference was that the state would not decide the best way to generate more money for education is put the burden of that primarily upon the cities and towns, or the 13 towns that I serve. But that's what they've done so far. So that is, as you are right, it's a state-determined, it's a rearview mirror type approach, but it's a state-determined two primary factors, wages and property values. So the state arrives at a number, we then wait for the number. The number is sent out, usually about the time the governor's budget is coming out. And so we, Jim Smith and I, we all inherit the number from the state. Does that answer that question?
It does, yeah, and then that translates then down to, so there's a 4.82 state increase, a state mandated increase. in the
Okay.
minimum. That's
But
right?
it's not consistent across 13 towns, but yes,
Right, so, but the overall came up to a 4.82.
yes, it did.
And our number might be higher than that, because
Yes.
we're the wealthy town.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. There's nothing we can do about that.
It's also based on information that doesn't come from us.
Okay. Pat, did you?
But there is considerable debate and discussion over the need for a new formula at the state level. But the, kind of got stuck in neutral, if you will, in the sense of, with declining enrollments in many environments, not ours, the constituents have lobbied with their reps and senators to protect them into kind of a safe, harmless kind of thing, no fewer dollars than previous, no matter, even if you might have fewer students. And so there is a lot of conversation about a new ed reform formula going forward. Hope we see it. Hope it provides. The weakness of the conversation is some of the legislation includes $2 billion worth of new funding is needed, but not a sophisticated conversation on the revenue streams that will pay for it. Okay, and so now comes the conversations about sports betting and casino money, new fees on vaping and other kinds of, call it sin taxes, conversations on, eventually on marijuana revenues. And so there's all kinds of discussions relative to new revenue streams. People, generally, the legislators, like to avoid the new tax revenue driving, because it's not that popular. And so, but the state is wrestling with the need to balance and the logic, if you will, of needing additional state money to fund education, to relieve the cities and towns of that, and generate new revenues to do it.
I may be ignorant on some of these facts, because I know that BVT is our school, it's Sutton's school. But I always see it a little bit in the same light as a private school, where in a private school, the families have some responsibility for some of the cost of it over and above what you'd pay in the public school. And I'm wondering if that has ever been considered here with BVT, because it is such a significant cost differential between what we pay for a student here in Sutton High School versus what we pay for BVT. Is that a possibility, so that the town isn't so burdened by the costs, or the towns, not just Sutton, but the towns in general?
Well, to begin with, when you compare and contrast the cost of a traditional high school student versus a Valley Tech student, you'd have to add about 20 different cost factors that are not in the other costs, because the municipality pays for it. And in the budget booklet, you'll see one section that lists everything from unemployment compensation to the annual audit. Those expenses are borne by us because they're captured in a single request. The local school system doesn't do that. I'm certified as a local school superintendent. What happens in the local system is a variety of cost factors are not in the school budget. They're in the municipal budget. So you'd have to collect all of those and then do an analysis based on what the true cost, to look at the difference. And you won't find the difference that if we were able to take 20 cost items out of our budget, you wouldn't have the same per cost either, per student. But we have no way to share that. We have to own it. We can't give it to a town. We will gladly take any donation that any citizen wishes to make, but in Massachusetts, that the cities and towns have an obligation to provide access to what they call Chapter 74, a quality vocational technical education. And Valley Tech has provided that to Sutton at a lesser cost than it would be to send people outside, and an education that is considered to be the best in the state. So I would argue that it's very cost effective. That when you look at the over $2 million with the grants, the only way in which granting agencies would give us money is the fact that the towns provide a matching effort, a base in which to do. So we actually can provide an education that is much more costly by drawing so much funds from grants and other kinds of sources to complement that which the towns provide. So the first thing is an apple and orange comparison if you're looking at a high school X, and I'm going to pick on any one of them, versus Valley
No,
Tech.
I understand the apples and oranges. I'm just trying to ask the question for the people that perhaps haven't paid as much attention to the differences, because I think people see a huge differential in cost, and that people ask us the question. So,
And I recognize the merit of the question, and I've heard it as well. If you look at, I would suggest that in your conversations of responding to anyone, and I'm the eldest son of 7. My father served on a finance committee in Milford, so these are conversations that are not a surprise. But within the budget information, you'll find a list here of some of the categories that are in our budget that you wouldn't find in the K through 12 or if the high school budget full quality. So you might ask citizens to recognize that this is a one-time consolidated request, and we'll never come back. Our budget request, it's all built in, it addresses everything. That is not true in the other setting. And from an actuarial, from a financial base, you're gonna find all different they clearly have cost, but the town's paying them. And this is very common across the state. I hope that helps you in responding to anyone who might attempt to look at differences.
very good.
So, Dr. Fitzpatrick, you run a great school. There's no doubt about it. Question for me is, I run the numbers and I see that I know we've had this question before, but we're at the high end. We're the
Yes.
highest end.
Yep.
Per student, 14,593. Your average is 11,998. What part is this in considering your student body coming in?
Not a factor. we don't consider the fact that a student, you know, whose town, based on the state's calculations, has a higher contributory rate to be more valuable or less valuable than somebody else. By the way, it's interesting, you use the 14,594, that includes debt,
Mhm.
okay? Debt you wouldn't find debt included in the local school system number. That's gonna be paid by the town.
It's an aggregate number. I mean, you know your numbers, you know your school, it's fantastic. I get that. I just, when you look at this in terms of stark black and white, this is what pops out.
Right.
And it's definitely something that, as a member of this finance committee, I have to put in consideration. You know, that, it's, you know, we see the rising number of incoming students from our town who are going to BVT. They're definitely being educated in a fantastic way. Ultimately, it's an added cost that we look at, and, you know, we share a higher end of the burden compared to your average town.
That's true. Actually, life would be much easier for me if it were equalized across the 13 towns, and it was that before the court case.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually before me. But the other thing is Sutton did not have the greatest increase in students from our 13 towns.
Okay.
It has had an increase of 6 students, okay? I had a conversation with Jim and also with the superintendent, Ted Friend. The current projection suggested the increase next time would be 6 or 7 additional students, so it's kind of like, but it just is not the greatest increase of the 13 towns. Did I answer your question? I hope, Jeff?
You did, yep.
Okay.
You did.
Okay. Patrick?
Hi, excuse me. I have a question on total population, your number of students. You gave us a number of 1252. I look at the book here, it says 1247. Last year was 1240. But I just go back to a conversation that we've had over the years here of mandates that you have. You know, you can't have 75 students in a welding shop. Or a sheet metal shop, those kinds of things like that. So the school seems to be growing. Where are you putting all these people is my question, and do you anticipate growing? And let me throw out my last question, you can add it all together here. I read recently, the governor and the lieutenant governor are very much in favor of vocational schools, which I am too, by the way. And there's some thought about money coming from the state so that you can add a building or others can add a building. Have you applied for those? Do you anticipate that happening? There's a grand open-ended questions.
Sure. Initially, the 1252 was, kind of, it's a reference point. All of these are pictures in time. The October 1 number is whatever's in the budget, okay? And sometimes students, they don't stay with us, okay? So you find, the October 1 number, I don't want to give you different numbers because it's.
This is 1247?
Yeah, the 1247 that was the number to build next year's budget.
Okay,
Okay.
but that's still
Yeah.
up from last year, and last year was up 11 over the last one, so the school is growing.
That's correct. So, so we've had moderate growth, half a dozen more, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 students, okay? So very modest growth. There are 832 candidates that I'm aware applied for next year's 9th grade class, okay, from our 13 towns. Some years ago, I asked the towns to support a $2.9 million expansion, and 7 towns supported that. But if all towns didn't support it, it didn't seem to be prudent to proceed. It was kind of a divisive arrangement, so we didn't do that. The state periodically offers incentive money which is competitive, to make application. And so I regularly pursue, lobby, present, fight for additional money. The House of Representatives and the Senate unanimously supported a $4 million capital award to Blackstone Valley Tech. But it's still under review. It hasn't been awarded, okay? The Mass School Building Authority, which we are using, I think I mentioned that we're self-funding our roof project. By the way, that's another thing that the local system probably not gonna do, okay? We're working with the Mass School Building Authority when we can for moderate-sized budgetary requests, but they're not in an ability to they don't have enough money to do all the requests that they already have. So since the towns were reluctant, many of the towns were reluctant to support another capital expansion, even though the waiting list or the interest in coming is astronomical, then I pursue money through either the feds or the state. And so I have a petition before the state. It is not yet awarded, and to see whether or not we can build some additional classrooms to again grow gradually. So I hope I've answered those questions. As far as shops, yes. Shops are defined for safety and collective bargaining purposes.
Thank you.
Okay.
My question is you try to look forward, okay, and see where you are, and you know, I'll get Tim back up here to talk about the limitations that a town has, and we went through, you were here when we did the projection going out for 4 or 5 years, that if we don't have, you know, more than $150,000 of new growth and all, you know, and all those kinds of things, we run into a deficit, which causes a problem. So if you're thinking about that, then to me, good planning is to look at the education that we have is, and if there is the possibility that you could build a new building and take on another 50, 60, 70 students, if we have whatever percentage, if we have 10% of the students that are there,
Roughly 9, but yes.
then that means that, you know, we should have a representative number, and at $14,000 apiece, you know, that's a lot of money to do, no matter how good the school is.
Mhm.
So what does that do to our long-range plan so that we maintain all the other services here in town? That's the purpose of the question. I'm not finding fault. If the state wants to give you $4 million, wonderful. But we need to know about it in advance. And I would hope that the good governor would come and ask the 13 towns, you know, if we build it, if they will come, can you afford it?
Well, right now, the town has the exposure of students applying to take the vocational programs out of this district, okay? And the outgoing tuition is roughly $16,500 plus transportation. So that you already have the exposure of students who can apply to pursue a quality Chapter 74 vocational technical program at any place.
So students from Sutton could go to Worcester?
They could.
Do we have any, Jim?
They go to Bay Path, Worcester, Tri-County, or Norfolk Aggie, whatever it might be.
They are going to Norfolk.
But
That-
Norfolk is different. That's a whole different subject for me.
Well, it can be, but that's part of the exposure, especially if we do a veterinary assisting type program. It could actually reduce the exposure the town has.
Okay.
Have
So-
you, oh,
So, my last question, so if you're rolling the dice, do you think sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, the state will fund a new, additional space for you?
Well, there's one of the, I don't know what the state will do. I mean, that's a bit of crystal balling. We would, I think the towns would be fortunate to receive state seed money that reduces the exposure of out-of-district tuitions and improves the facility that they've had a 55-year investment in without asking the towns for that money, okay? And so, I've been your superintendent for 26 years. I don't know if I'll see it while I'm serving you.
I'm not saying no, this is planning, that's all it is, it's planning.
And I recognize that, and we do our best to continue to share. We're also trying to plan the fact when there's 832 students from the district trying to get in, that we're trying not to ignore, you know, that level of interest in coming and accessing. And if they go elsewhere, that'll really be a burden.
I'm sorry, how large is the freshman class? 832 apply, how many get in?
About 315.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was
Yes.
just, last year you increased your staffing, I think 1.5 or 2 FTEs this year. Are you pretty level, or are you?
Yes, we have, there was, I recall, it was like a little over 1 new FTE, but it was pieces of expanded positions, not new positions.
And
And I presented that in an earlier budget presentation.
And this year's budget is just the one?
Yes, but that's not a new person,
No, I
that's pieces.
understand.
Okay,
It's
that's
an
fine. It
FTE.
equates to an FTE.
Yes, okay.
I think the big thing for me is, the metrics and the valuation of the school are obviously very high. You're recognized academically, all the time, and we recognize that. The demand for that academic program you know, is extremely high and competitive, which, you know, is a testament to the education those kids are getting there. We're always gonna be hurt by the ability to pay. So our assessment is always going to be higher than all the rest of the towns in terms of the minimum contribution. That, you know, that's on us. There's not much we can do about that. You know, in terms of, you know, we're pulling this together by shoestrings, as Pat was alluding to, in terms of the long-range planning. You know, the value in the education and the value in the budget is clearly there. You know, now it's taking that next step of being able to continue to afford it as the demand for this academic program continues to grow.
Yeah, what I focus in is complementing the investment you make. If we were a stock, it's like splitting, okay? I mean, I'm kidded about being a priest, a rabbi, or a minister as I'm out in the public all the time looking for, Bob knows we do it through golf fundraisers, gourmet dinners. We're constantly trying to raise money to complement the investments we make. By doing that, it means we can provide a high-quality education, but not ask you to bear the burden of it all, because of so many different ways, whether it be $2.2 million grants or other kinds of sources. But without your confidence in us, I would have no chance at all to secure money from outside investors. It's not a venture capital fund, but I'm saying that this is a process of asking others to invest in us. If those who are us don't invest in us, I have no chance. I can't secure those additional monies, those additional resources, those additional instructional materials, or the equipment.
One of the things that just, and then I'll kind of leave it at this, is as you look at the enrollment, you know, by towns, and there are certain towns that always have very low, the lowest enrollment, and they're not the smallest towns. And I'm wondering why that is, and if there's anything that's addressed in the admissions process that says, you know, town-wide, we have 56 students, town X, we've got 114 students. And this other town might have actually more students overall in their student population than we do, or how is that addressed, or is it addressed? You have certain towns that seem to be bearing the brunt of the expense. We get the benefit for sure of additional kids going, but how do you account for that disparity?
We're at the mercy of the information that comes to us from the sending system. Okay, when you look at the admissions process, the vast majority is determined by the sending school system, not us. There's a reduced focus on grades. Grades used to be 40%, now it's 30%. How well a student does, how that student is motivated to do well, is determined not by us, by the sending school system. The next category is behavior. Okay, there is some weight. There's no exam, no test. The ability to have a student behave is, again, at the mercy of what happens in the sending school system, not us. Next factor is attendance. The manner in which the school system maintains its attendance, monitors it, forgives it, supports it, is a key factor for our employers. They feel if somebody doesn't show up for work, they're not going to get the job. So that's a component. Then we have the sending school recommendation from the counselors of the sending school. All of these are outside of us. It comes in. Then we have an interview conducted by the admissions of usually the counselors at our school, who are looking to see the commitment that the youngster has to benefit from the added investment that's possible at our school. If they have any interest in trades, is there any other kind of linkage, motivation, and commitment? And so the youngster is an advocate for himself or herself relative why the town should invest in them. 80% of the information is coming from the sending school system.
But is there a quota, like a minimum amount that, you know, based on the relative size of this town to all the other towns, we need to get at least this many people? You know, it's like colleges want, you know, a farmer from Idaho that, you know, can play the flute. We need so many students from this town to make our student body.
For the record, we had a parent from Idaho call us to see if they moved into the district, could their son come to Valley Tech this year? That's a first. That is a true story. Sutton has, no town has a quota, to answer that question. You've asked It's been a conversation. So we don't tell someone they can't come because they're from a certain town. They compete against a pool of 13 towns. Now, Sutton pays the mortgage at 5.9%, but you have a participation level of 9%. So it means somebody else is paying the mortgage, but you have more students in it, in the building.
I'm not trying to,
No, I'm
I'm
just
I'm just wondering, it seems like every year, there is a certain, one particular town I look at every year that's got a number in the 50s.
Mhm.
And it's not a small town, and why is, I just don't understand, is it something that they're doing to say, to try and keep their students within their system, their town?
Well, if somebody attempts to deny the opportunity, that's one way to do it, or you can attempt to discredit us, but good luck with that, with the success of the students. But what we do have, we have certain situations that we've noticed too, okay? And we probably also can identify the town based on the numbers you've used. All right, in that community, there is actually, the state rep and others have an investigative activity trying to determine why they are under-enrolled. What's wrong with the referral process, which we don't control, comes to us.
Okay.
And so there's a study underway, there's some concerns, there've been presentations in several settings, including the Board of Select Persons in that committee. So they're looking at that. But as I said, we're at the mercy of the recommendation. The jury is not us.
So our kids are getting better grades, have better attendance, have better,
Yeah, we've got great
we've got
kids,
great
and it's a
kids.
great school to go to. So how can you go wrong?
I don't know, I've said this to Bob Rico when I first met him, if I had high school kids, I would love to have them at Blackstone Valley Tech. Many of our staff have their children in the school, not because they want to ride together.
Well, I can tell you that we're happy about the health insurance, the work you've done in that area. You know, again, that 4.82, still really don't understand it, why the state mandate on that, but it is what it is. And so unless anyone has other
No,
questions?
that's it. It's a great school, what can you say?
Well, I just would point out that I took very seriously the concerns, the priorities, the challenges that were issued at the town meeting, okay? And I would hope that the building, the budget that's built for FY '20 confirms that we responded to those.
Well, thank you, and you have, and I think that's one of the mistakes that finance committees can make, is that they focus on that shiny object of the assessment,
Yep.
which is determined by the number of kids and all those other things, and really not focus on, and try and work together on the budget itself, and share our thoughts on that. So I think that was helpful, somewhat painful, hopefully not too painful for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think that's important for the towns to have input on that budget, and not just ultimately, oh, we have six less kids or 6 more kids going, so we're spending more or less. I think that's important that we as a committee and the other committees do that, is they look critically at your budget, because I think you end up with a better budget. You know, if it focuses people more on an issue, that's okay.
You're going to have suggestions relative to cost effectiveness, okay,
Yep.
or other sources of money,
Yep.
things like that. So I would just ask anybody who attempts to compare the 14,000 per student, roughly, the cost outside of debt, you have to add a whole collection of cost items in any traditional high school per student analysis. There's just lots of cost items that are there.
I
Okay?
think
And that's been a
I-
conversation with
yeah.
town managers and superintendents across the state.
Yeah, I think it's a different cost structure. I mean, with just vocational, you know, the equipment and all those all the issues, all the different things that you need versus regular classroom. I think it's really hard to compare those two.
It's a regional school system.
And it's a regional school
That's
system.
what it is.
But we have to consider a lot of the costs are fixed costs not all of them, but some of those costs that we have, that the town absorbs are fixed costs, so.
Well, you can assist the local systems. We don't ask you to do that. We only make a single request that incorporates all of that, okay? I mean, in a local system, if there's additional state aid, come back at a special town meeting and ask for additional money, which fine, a town department can do that. We're not a town department. So we operate with a series of disadvantages, which is all part of the responsibility. And so we just ask people to recognize that that's why we have a single consolidated request. And you'd have to add an awful lot of other additional cost items before you determine what the true per pupil cost is of a traditional high school student across the whole state.
Mhm. Good. Thanks for coming.
I'll see you, Tom.
Thank you.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you very much for
Appreciate it.
coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, so it's, right now it's 8 o'clock. We're going to take a motion to continue till tomorrow at 6:30.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion and vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
We're going to
Aye.
continue to tomorrow, and we're adjourned for the evening.